Disclaimer: the information presented in this video regarding autonomous vehicle technology, automotive safety, liability, and United States traffic laws is intended strictly for educational and entertainment purposes only. The landscape of self-driving technology and state-by-state legislation is rapidly evolving. The content provided does not constitute legal, automotive, financial, or safety advice. Under no circumstances should viewers rely on this information to operate a motor vehicle, bypass manufacturer safety warnings, or make assumptions about their vehicle's capabilities. Historical trends and case studies discussed throughout this presentation are not indicative of future performance, regulatory decisions, or safety outcomes. Always consult your vehicle's official manufacturer manual, adhere strictly to local and federal traffic laws, and exercise personal due diligence. You, as the human operator, are solely and legally responsible for the safe operation of any vehicle you drive on public roads. Right now, across the United States, millions of drivers are cruising down major arteries like Interstate 10 in California or Interstate 95 in Florida, taking their hands off the steering wheel, looking away from the windshield, and placing their lives entirely in the hands of corporate marketing jargon. We are currently witnessing one of the most dangerous and widely accepted mass misunderstandings in automotive history. You have likely seen the viral videos circulating on social media platforms. A driver fast asleep behind the wheel of an electric vehicle roaring down a Texas highway at 75 miles per hour. A completely empty driver's seat in a test vehicle navigating a busy, pedestrian-filled intersection in downtown San Francisco. People playing board games or watching movies in the back seat, while their car allegedly drives them home through evening gridlock. These viral moments create a terrifying illusion of futuristic competence, and that illusion is actively causing catastrophic, highly publicized accidents on American roads. Here is the controversial reality that major automakers do not want to spell out for you in their flashy, multi-million-dollar Super Bowl commercials. A significant portion of the premium cars sold in the United States today are advertised with feature names that imply total vehicular independence. These proprietary names suggest absolute autonomy. They suggest that the human being has been relegated to a mere passenger in their own property, free to kick back, answer work emails, or take a nap on a long road trip. But the harsh legal and mechanical truth is this: if you are sitting behind the wheel of a commercially available, privately owned car right now, and that car crashes into a concrete barrier while these advanced systems are engaged, the software is not the entity going to jail. The corporate engineers are not the ones receiving the traffic citation. You are the one entirely liable for the property damage. You are the one facing the devastating legal consequences and potential criminal charges. Let us look at the historical trends of automotive automation in the United States to understand how we arrived at this critical, life-threatening juncture. In the mid-20th century, the introduction of basic cruise control was a revolutionary step for long-haul driving across the newly constructed interstate highway system. It was a simple, easily understood mechanical hold on the throttle. Drivers inherently understood its strict limitations. If traffic suddenly slowed, or if a sharp curve approached, the driver knew without a doubt that they had to intervene immediately and press the brake pedal. There was no psychological confusion about who was operating the vehicle. Fast forward to the present day, and the psychological waters have been completely muddied. Modern vehicles are equipped with millions of lines of proprietary code, complex algorithms processing terabytes of visual data per second, and intricate sensor suites that can theoretically detect a deer darting across a dark Pennsylvania road faster than the human eye can register the movement. However, this massive leap forward in processing power has created a deadly psychological trap. When a car successfully steers itself along a well-paved, brightly lit highway in Nevada for 300 miles without a single incident, human nature dictates that the driver will begin to trust the system implicitly. The driver's brain will naturally start to disengage from the active task of monitoring the environment. But the software running that vehicle does not possess human intuition. It cannot contextualize a highly unusual, chaotic scenario, such as a flatbed truck hauling an oversized, strangely shaped load that obscures the painted lane markings, or an emergency flare burning brightly on the asphalt during a torrential, blinding downpour in Seattle. When these edge cases occur, which are the rare, unpredictable events that represent a daily reality on United States infrastructure, the automated system often disengages abruptly. It flashes a red warning light on the dashboard, sounds a loud acoustic alarm, and instantly hands the full responsibility of avoiding a high-speed collision back to the human driver. If that human has been physically and mentally disconnected from the driving task for the last 45 minutes, their reaction time is severely compromised. This transition period, known in human factors engineering as the handoff problem, is the devastating consequence of the gap between perceived autonomy and actual technological capability. This brings us to the ultimate open loop that every single driver in America needs to thoroughly understand before they sign a financing agreement for their next vehicle or engage a driver assist feature on the highway. There is a universal, internationally recognized engineering standard that dictates exactly what a car can do, and more importantly, who is legally responsible when things go horribly wrong. It is called the Society of Automotive Engineers Levels of Driving Automation. It is a rigid scale ranging from level 0 to level 5. The terrifying part of this reality? Most consumers genuinely believe they are purchasing a level 4 or level 5 vehicle, a machine capable of driving itself flawlessly anywhere, anytime, in any weather condition. In reality, the vast majority of these highly touted, incredibly expensive technology packages currently on the consumer market are merely level 2. What happens when you cross the invisible legal threshold from level 2 to level 3? Who actually pays the massive insurance claim when a level 3 vehicle decides to swerve into a guardrail? And what is the closely guarded industry secret about level 5 total autonomy that might mean you will never actually see a vehicle without a steering wheel parked in your driveway during your lifetime? Over the course of this deep dive presentation, we are going to tear apart the marketing fluff and expose the raw engineering reality. We will dissect every single level of autonomy, applying it directly to the chaotic, unpredictable reality of the United States highway and urban infrastructure. By the end of this presentation, you will possess a comprehensive, engineer-level understanding of exactly how autonomous driving technology functions today. The specific problem we are solving for you is the dangerous, potentially fatal gap in public knowledge regarding automotive safety and genuine capability. Whether you are navigating the relentless gridlock of Los Angeles, traversing the rural unlit highways of the Midwest, or commuting through the harsh, sensor-blinding winters of the Northeast, you need to know exactly how these digital systems interpret the physical world around them. You will learn how to accurately identify the true autonomous level of any vehicle currently on the dealership lot, cutting straight through the deceptive, futuristic branding. We will explore the specific hardware components, detailing the crucial differences between radar, LiDAR, and optical camera systems required for each stage of automation. You will understand why a car equipped exclusively with cameras might completely fail to navigate an unexpected whiteout blizzard in Colorado, while a LiDAR-equipped vehicle might perform differently. Furthermore, we will delve into the complex legal landscape, analyzing how different state legislatures from California to Florida are currently regulating autonomous testing on public roads, and what those specific laws mean for your personal liability as a driver. You will not just be a passive consumer. You will be an educated, highly informed operator, capable of making safe, intelligent decisions about the rapidly advancing technology you trust with your life and the lives of your family. This knowledge will serve as your ultimate defense against deceptive marketing practices and the hidden high-speed risks lurking in the code of modern automobiles. Right out of the gate, we need to establish the baseline of the Society of Automotive Engineers standard. This internationally recognized standard relies heavily on a foundational concept called the dynamic driving task. The dynamic driving task encompasses all the real-time operational and tactical functions required to safely operate a motor vehicle on public roads. This includes the mechanical inputs of steering, braking, and accelerating, as well as the cognitive inputs of monitoring the roadway for hazards, interpreting traffic signals, and reacting dynamically to the surrounding environment. The 6 distinct tiers of the SAE scale, ranging from 0 to 5, are entirely defined by calculating exactly how much of this specific driving task the machine performs versus the human being sitting in the left seat. To understand the reality of our highways in the year 2026, we have to start at the absolute bottom of the automation ladder. Level 0 represents no driving automation whatsoever. At level 0, the human operator performs 100% of the dynamic driving task at all times. The vehicle provides no active, automated assistance with the steering column, the acceleration systems, or the braking mechanisms. Imagine if you are driving a meticulously maintained 2005 pickup truck down a rural 2-lane highway in Montana. Your hands mechanically turn the physical steering wheel, your foot physically actuates the throttle, and your eyes serve as the exclusive sensor array scanning the tree line for wildlife. However, it is crucial to understand that level 0 does frequently include passive warning systems. If that older truck was retrofitted with a modern blind spot warning system that triggers an acoustic beep when a car enters your peripheral space, or a forward collision alert that flashes a red light on the dashboard, it fundamentally remains a level 0 vehicle. Why? Because those digital systems are strictly advisory. They only warn you. They do not actively intervene in the mechanical operation or alter the physical trajectory of the vehicle. If a collision occurs, the legal liability rests entirely on your shoulders because the machine possessed zero capacity to avoid the impact on its own. The historical trends of automotive safety began to shift dramatically with the widespread introduction of Level 1, officially defined as driver assistance. This represents the very first step into the automation matrix, but its engineering scope is strictly limited. A Level 1 system can actively assist the driver with either steering input or speed control, but critically, it cannot execute both of those tasks at the exact same time. The classic case study for Level 1 automation is the implementation of early adaptive cruise control. Imagine Michael, a regional sales representative commuting through the sprawling heavy traffic of Chicago in a 2016 sedan. He engages his adaptive cruise control on Interstate 90. The car utilizes a forward-facing radar emitter, typically concealed behind the front grille, to bounce radio waves off the rear bumper of the vehicle directly ahead. By calculating the precise time it takes for those radio waves to return to the sensor, the vehicle's onboard computer maintains a mathematically locked following distance, automatically applying the physical brakes or the electronic throttle as the flow of traffic fluctuates. However, in this Level 1 scenario, Michael remains entirely responsible for the lateral control of the vehicle. He must steer. If the highway curves sharply, the car will maintain its speed and drive straight off the asphalt unless Michael physically turns the wheel. Alternatively, Level 1 can feature lane keeping assist, where a single windshield-mounted optical camera tracks the high-contrast painted white lines and provides gentle, corrective torque to the steering wheel to keep the vehicle centered. But in that specific scenario, Michael must actively control the gas and brake pedals. Because the human operator is still performing the vast majority of the dynamic driving task, there is zero ambiguity in a court of law or during an insurance investigation. If Michael rear-ends a commercial semi-truck while his Level 1 system is active, the potential outcomes are legally identical to him driving a fully manual, Level 0 car. The driver failed to adequately supervise the vehicle and the roadway. This brings us to the most perilous phase of the entire autonomous spectrum, the phase where the vast majority of premium, highly advertised vehicles operate today in 2026. Welcome to Level 2, officially classified as partial driving automation. Within the automotive engineering and safety communities, this tier is widely recognized as the danger zone. At Level 2, the vehicle possesses the processing power, the software architecture, and the hardware integration to control both steering and acceleration or deceleration simultaneously. The car is actively utilizing a complex sensor fusion matrix. It relies on multiple high-resolution optical cameras to interpret lane geometry and traffic signs, forward and rear-facing millimeter-wave radar to track the velocity and distance of surrounding metallic objects, and ultrasonic sensors embedded in the bumpers to detect immediate, close-quarter obstacles. When you activate a Level 2 system on a bright, clearly marked highway in Arizona, the illusion of full autonomy is incredibly convincing. The vehicle accelerates smoothly from a stop, maintains perfect lane centering around sweeping curves, and slows down gracefully when a slower vehicle cuts into your lane. It feels exactly like an advanced robot is driving you to your destination. But the most critical, life-saving nuance of Level 2 is an engineering concept called the fallback system. In any Level 2 vehicle, the human being is the designated legal fallback system. The machine is not programmed or legally permitted to handle complex, unpredictable edge cases. It does not know how to react safely if a construction zone suddenly alters the lane routing with faded orange cones, or if severe sun glare temporarily blinds the forward-facing optical cameras. Imagine if Sarah is driving a state-of-the-art 2026 electric luxury sedan on a crowded high-speed freeway in Atlanta. She activates her expensive, heavily branded Level 2 highway assist system. For the first 45 minutes, the car performs flawlessly. Human psychology dictates that Sarah naturally begins to relax. Her hands might hover slightly off the steering wheel, and her visual scan rate of the horizon severely decreases. She is experiencing a well-documented phenomenon known as automation complacency. Suddenly, a flatbed tow truck carrying a strangely shaped piece of industrial equipment merges aggressively into her lane, partially obscuring the painted lane dividers. The vehicle's cameras cannot mathematically resolve the unusual object, and the radar system receives conflicting data from the metal grating of the flatbed. In a fraction of a second, the Level 2 system reaches the limit of its operational design and disengages. It blares a loud acoustic alarm and flashes a frantic red steering wheel icon on the digital dashboard. The vehicle is effectively stating that it no longer comprehends the environment, and that the human must take over immediately to prevent a high-speed collision. If Sarah has mentally checked out of the driving task to check a text message or adjust the infotainment screen, her cognitive reaction time is critically delayed. This exact transition period, known as the handoff problem, has been the focal point of numerous high-profile case studies involving catastrophic highway collisions over the past decade. The potential outcomes of relying too heavily on Level 2 systems are devastating precisely because the human brain is fundamentally terrible at passively monitoring a highly reliable automated system for rare, sudden, and catastrophic failures. The automotive industry routinely markets these Level 2 systems with futuristic, proprietary names that heavily imply total vehicular independence, actively fostering this dangerous public complacency. Yet, buried deep in the fine print of the owner's manual, the manufacturer explicitly and legally states that the driver must remain fully attentive, with hands on the wheel and eyes on the road, ready to assume immediate control at a moment's notice. If a crash occurs, the telemetry data pulled from the vehicle's onboard event data recorder will definitively prove whether the driver failed to apply steering torque or brake pressure prior to impact, placing the entirety of the legal, civil, and financial liability squarely on the driver. Consumers are currently paying thousands of dollars extra for a premium technology package that essentially turns them into a highly stressed driving instructor, endlessly supervising a robotic system that could make a fatal calculation error at any given second. The transition from Level 0 to Level 2 represents a massive leap in daily commuting convenience, but an equally massive leap in hidden psychological risk. The driver is currently trapped in a perilous gray area of perceived autonomy versus actual mechanical capability. But what happens when the manufacturer officially steps forward and tells the driver that they can legally stop paying attention to the road? What happens when the multinational corporation that built the car assumes the ultimate legal liability for the dynamic driving task? The monumental jump from Level 2 to Level 3 is not just an over-the-air software update. It is an absolute earthquake in liability law, insurance policy underwriting, and human psychology. When the machine finally chimes and tells you it is legally safe to look away from the windshield, the entire established framework of American driving shatters. You will not believe the massive, multi-billion-dollar catch hidden inside the Level 3 designation, and why major automakers are absolutely terrified to activate it on your local city streets. The reality of Level 3, officially defined by the Society of Automotive Engineers as conditional driving automation, is the exact point where the fundamental relationship between the human being and the machine completely fractures and rebuilds itself into something legally terrifying for corporate automotive lawyers. Up until this specific threshold, you, the driver, have been on the hook for every single dent, scratch, and catastrophic collision. But the monumental catch hidden inside the Level 3 designation is a complete inversion of legal liability. When a Level 3 system is successfully engaged and operating within its strict parameters, the human driver is no longer driving. In the eyes of the law and the engineering schematic, the human transitions from the active operator to a fallback-ready user. For the first time in automotive history, the vehicle itself assumes the entirety of the dynamic driving task. If that vehicle crashes into a concrete median or rear-ends another car while the Level 3 system is actively and properly engaged, the manufacturer, not the human sitting in the driver's seat, is generally the entity facing the legal and financial liability. You can instantly understand why major automakers are absolutely terrified to unleash this technology uninhibited across your local city streets. Accepting the liability for millions of unpredictable drivers is a multi-billion-dollar gamble. Because of this massive financial risk, automotive engineers protect their companies by utilizing a hyper-restrictive concept called the operational design domain. This is the ultimate technological force field. A Level 3 vehicle is not capable of driving itself anywhere at any time. Instead, it is strictly geofenced and condition-locked to highly specific environments. To understand how restrictive this is, we can look at the historical trends set by the first legally certified Level 3 systems that hit United States public roads, such as the Mercedes-Benz Drive Pilot system, which received initial certifications in Nevada and California. These early systems did not allow you to sleep on a cross-country road trip. They were essentially highly advanced traffic jam chauffeurs. Imagine if a commuter named David is driving his 2026 luxury sedan on the notoriously congested Interstate 405 in Los Angeles. It is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun is shining, and the weather is perfectly clear. David is stuck in stop-and-go gridlock, surrounded by thousands of other frustrated commuters. Because David is on a heavily pre-mapped, divided interstate highway, and because the speed of traffic has dropped below 40 miles per hour, his vehicle recognizes that it has entered its highly specific operational design domain. A distinct light on the steering wheel illuminates, indicating that the Level 3 system is available for activation. David presses the button, takes his hands off the wheel, and completely removes his feet from the pedals. Legally, David can now pick up his smartphone, respond to work emails, watch a streaming video on the central infotainment console, or read a hardcover book. He is legally permitted to divert his visual and cognitive attention entirely away from the highway. However, David is not allowed to fall asleep, and he is not allowed to move out of the driver's seat. This is the conditional aspect of conditional driving automation. The vehicle is constantly monitoring David using an interior infrared tracking camera pointed directly at his face and eyes. It is ensuring that his head remains in a position where he could theoretically take back control if requested. While David is reading his book, the vehicle is executing millions of calculations per second. To safely shoulder the legal liability, a Level 3 vehicle requires an incredibly expensive, highly redundant sensor suite that goes far beyond standard cameras and basic radar. It utilizes precise LiDAR technology, which bounces rapid pulses of laser light off surrounding objects to create a highly accurate, three-dimensional topographical map of the traffic jam in real time. It uses ultrasonic moisture sensors in the wheel wells to detect if the asphalt is becoming slick. It constantly cross-references its physical sensors with a high-definition GPS map that is accurate down to the nearest centimeter, pulling live data from cellular networks to anticipate upcoming construction zones. But what happens when the conditions suddenly change? What if the traffic jam clears up and the cars ahead begin accelerating to 65 miles per hour, fundamentally exceeding the 40-mile-per-hour limit of the operational design domain? Or what if a sudden violent Los Angeles downpour begins, blinding the optical cameras and scattering the LiDAR laser pulses? This is where the terrifying reality of the Level 3 mushy middle reveals itself. When the vehicle detects that it is about to exit its safe operating parameters, it issues a takeover request. This is a highly orchestrated escalation of visual and auditory warnings. The dashboard flashes aggressively, the seatbelt might vibrate, and a loud chime demands that David put down his book and resume control. Here is the life-or-death engineering variable. The system must give David a sufficient amount of time to transition his brain from reading a novel back to operating a 2-ton machine at highway speeds. Historical human factors research indicates this cognitive transition can take anywhere from 10 to 15 seconds. During that transition period, the vehicle must continue to drive itself safely. If David ignores the warnings, perhaps because he has suffered a sudden medical emergency like a heart attack, the vehicle will execute a minimal risk condition maneuver. It will not just shut off and crash. It will automatically turn on the hazard lights, safely decelerate within its lane, and bring the vehicle to a complete, controlled stop, subsequently unlocking the doors and potentially placing an automated call to emergency services. This 10-second handoff period is exactly why many automotive safety experts and rival technology companies argue that Level 3 is inherently flawed. Asking a human being to remain on standby as a highly reliable backup system, while simultaneously giving them legal permission to mentally check out, contradicts basic human psychology. If a catastrophic sensor failure occurs at 60 miles per hour, 10 seconds is an eternity, but it is also not nearly enough time for a distracted human to process the chaotic reality of an impending collision and execute a flawless evasive maneuver. The liability is so massive, and the handoff is so inherently dangerous, that some of the largest players in the automotive and technology sectors have decided to completely skip Level 3 entirely. They believe that if the machine is going to drive, the human must be completely removed from the safety equation. This brings us to a reality that feels like science fiction, but is actively operating on the streets of major United States cities, right now in 2026. What happens when we completely sever the psychological link between the human and the machine? What happens when you step into a vehicle that does not even have a steering wheel, a brake pedal, or an accelerator? We are about to enter the bizarre, fully automated frontier of Level 4, where ghost cars are currently confusing local police departments, navigating complex urban environments completely empty, and forcing state legislatures to rewrite the fundamental definitions of vehicular law. Welcome to Level 4, officially classified by the Society of Automotive Engineers as high driving automation. This is the monumental technological leap where the driver's seat is not merely empty. It is entirely legally and mechanically irrelevant. To fully grasp the sheer magnitude of this engineering achievement, we must understand how Level 4 fundamentally breaks the historical paradigm of vehicular transportation. Unlike Level 3, which traps the human being in a highly dangerous state of permanent standby, Level 4 explicitly dictates that the automated driving system is solely responsible for every single aspect of the dynamic driving task, including all emergency fallback procedures. If you are sitting in a Level 4 vehicle and the primary sensor array suffers a catastrophic hardware failure, the vehicle will not issue a frantic auditory warning, demanding that you take the steering wheel. It will not flash a red light on the dashboard and surrender the driving task to you. In fact, many Level 4 vehicles currently operating on United States roads in 2026 do not even physically possess a steering wheel, a brake pedal, or an accelerator. You are no longer an operator. You are exclusively classified as a passenger or, in the case of autonomous delivery networks, the vehicle is simply transporting commercial freight. This total severance of human control is actively forcing local municipalities and state legislatures across the United States to completely rewrite the fundamental definitions of vehicular law. Let us examine the historical trends of law enforcement interacting with these ghost cars to illustrate just how disruptive this technology is to our civic infrastructure. In the early deployment phases in cities like San Francisco and Phoenix, police officers frequently encounter bizarre scenarios where an autonomous test vehicle would commit a minor traffic infraction, such as driving at night without its automated headlights illuminated. An officer would activate their emergency lights, the autonomous vehicle would dutifully pull over to the shoulder, and the officer would approach the driver's side window only to find absolutely no one inside. How does a municipal police department issue a moving violation to a server rack? Who signs the traffic citation? These unprecedented encounters forced the creation of specialized law enforcement interaction protocols. Today, Level 4 vehicles are programmed to visually recognize the flashing lights of emergency vehicles, calculate the trajectory of the police cruiser, safely yield the right-of-way, and if pulled over, automatically roll down the windows and connect the approaching officer to a remote corporate dispatch center via an integrated two-way cellular audio system. To understand how a machine navigates a chaotic urban environment without human intuition, imagine if a resident named Jessica in Austin, Texas in 2026 orders a ride using a ride-hailing application on her smartphone. The vehicle that silently glides to the curb is a fully autonomous Level 4 robotaxi. She opens the rear door, slides into the passenger cabin, and buckles her seatbelt. The interior looks fundamentally alien compared to a traditional automobile. The entire front dashboard area is completely devoid of manual driving controls, replaced instead by expansive digital displays indicating the planned route, the estimated time of arrival, and a real-time rendered visualization of what the car's sensors are actively seeing. Jessica can fall asleep, watch a movie, or work on her laptop with absolute legal immunity, because she possesses zero physical means to intervene in the vehicle's operation. However, this incredible level of autonomy comes with an absolute, non-negotiable engineering catch. Level 4 vehicles are strictly bound to a highly restrictive operational design domain. They are entirely geofenced. A geofence is an invisible, digitally mapped boundary that dictates exactly where the vehicle is legally and technically permitted to operate. A Level 4 robotaxi functioning flawlessly in downtown Austin cannot simply be driven to rural Wyoming and expected to function. The vehicle relies on ultra-high-definition, three-dimensional maps that have been meticulously scanned by previous mapping vehicles. These maps detail the exact height of every curb, the precise location of every stop sign, and the physical geometry of every intersection down to the millimeter. The vehicle cross-references these static, high-definition maps with its massive array of live, real-time sensors. This sensor fusion is the lifeblood of Level 4 autonomy. The vehicle is equipped with spinning rooftop LiDAR modules that fire millions of laser pulses per second to create a topographical map of moving objects. It utilizes long-range millimeter wave radar to calculate the velocity of oncoming traffic through dense fog or heavy rain. It employs acoustic microphones specifically trained to isolate and identify the distinct audio frequencies of approaching fire truck sirens, allowing the car to preemptively pull over before the emergency vehicle even rounds the corner. Furthermore, to legally operate without a human fallback, a Level 4 vehicle must possess absolute hardware redundancy. This means the car features two entirely independent braking circuits, two separate electric steering motors, and parallel computational processing units. If the primary onboard computer suffers a critical fault, a completely physically isolated secondary computer instantly detects the failure, assumes control of the backup steering and braking hardware, and executes a minimal risk condition maneuver to bring the vehicle to a safe, controlled stop on the side of the road. But what happens when this incredibly advanced system encounters a scenario that defies all of its programming and mapping data? What happens if Jessica is riding in her robotaxi and the vehicle suddenly encounters an active, chaotic construction zone where human workers are using ambiguous hand gestures to route traffic into the oncoming lane, directly contradicting the digital map and the painted road lines? The vehicle's software recognizes that it lacks the confidence to safely proceed. Because Jessica cannot take the wheel, the vehicle executes a safety pause. It comes to a halt, activates its hazard lights, and initiates a high-bandwidth cellular connection to a remote operations center located hundreds of miles away. Inside this secure facility, highly trained human remote assistants monitor the live video feeds and LiDAR data streaming from the stranded vehicle. It is crucial to note that these remote assistants are not using a steering wheel and pedals to remotely drive the car like a video game. Remote driving over a cellular network introduces severe latency risks. Instead, the remote assistant analyzes the complex construction zone, uses their computer mouse to draw a new, temporary digital path around the obstacles on the operator's screen, and transmits that updated pathing data back to the vehicle. The vehicle then autonomously executes the new path using its own localized sensors to avoid pedestrians and navigate the detour safely. This highly orchestrated dance between complex sensor fusion, strict geofencing, hardware redundancy, and remote human oversight is precisely how Level 4 vehicles are commercially operating today. They represent a monumental triumph of localized artificial intelligence. But they are completely dependent on perfectly mapped environments and constant cellular connectivity to function. They are, in essence, highly intelligent trains operating on invisible digital tracks. So, if we already have cars transporting passengers without steering wheels across major American cities in 2026, then what exactly is the final step? Why are the most brilliant automotive engineers and computer scientists on the planet losing sleep over the ultimate, mythical threshold of automotive technology? If Level 4 is already here, why might the true definition of Level 5 be computationally impossible with our current understanding of artificial intelligence? And what is the multi-trillion-dollar secret that the technology industry is hiding about the future of global transportation? To understand the monumental barrier standing between our current reality and the absolute pinnacle of automotive engineering, we must strictly define Level 5 according to the Society of Automotive Engineers. Level 5 is officially classified as full driving automation. The single defining characteristic that separates Level 5 from everything we have discussed thus far is the complete and total elimination of the operational design domain. There is no geofence. There is no weather restriction. There is no requirement for high definition, pre-mapped digital cartography, or constant cellular connectivity to a remote dispatch center. A true Level 5 autonomous vehicle is engineered to perform the entire dynamic driving task under all roadway and environmental conditions that can be managed by a capable human driver. If a human being can legally and physically drive a vehicle through a specific environment, the Level 5 machine must be able to execute that exact same route with zero human intervention, zero hesitation, and absolute mathematical precision. This requirement means the vehicle must possess an intelligence that rivals or perhaps even exceeds human cognitive reasoning. Currently, the artificial intelligence driving our most advanced Level 4 robot Axis is what computer scientists define as artificial narrow intelligence. It is exceptionally brilliant at executing highly specific, repetitive tasks within a controlled, thoroughly mapped environment. It can calculate the trajectory of an oncoming city bus in milliseconds, perfectly parallel park in a tight urban space, and strictly obey complex digital speed limits. However, it entirely lacks artificial general intelligence. It lacks human intuition, the ability to apply common sense to utterly novel, unprecedented situations. Human drivers navigate the physical world using an intricate, unspoken language of social contracts, eye contact, and subtle physical gestures. We intuitively understand the difference between a pedestrian standing near a crosswalk who is deeply engrossed in their smartphone and a pedestrian who is shifting their weight, actively preparing to step onto the asphalt. We make split-second judgment calls based on social context that a machine simply cannot mathematically calculate. Imagine if a driver named Marcus is taking a cross-country road trip in the year 2026, driving deep into the rural Appalachian Mountains. He turns off the paved state highway and begins navigating a steep, unmapped, heavily rutted dirt road winding up a mountainside. The lane is incredibly narrow, flanked by a sheer drop-off on one side and a solid rock wall on the other. Suddenly, Marcus encounters a heavy-duty logging truck coming down the mountain in the opposite direction. There is barely enough room for one vehicle to pass safely, let alone two massive machines. The painted lane lines vanished miles ago. There are no stop signs, no traffic signals, and absolutely zero cellular connectivity available in this remote valley to reach a corporate operations center. To resolve this highly dangerous standoff, Marcus and the commercial truck driver engage in a complex, unspoken human negotiation. They make direct eye contact through their respective windshields. The truck driver flashes his headlights twice and gestures casually with his left hand, indicating that he will slowly reverse to a small dirt pull-out 50 yards back up the hill. Marcus acknowledges the gesture with a nod, waits patiently for the space to clear, and then carefully maneuvers past the massive truck, tires inches from the cliff edge. A true Level 5 autonomous vehicle must be able to execute that exact same unmapped, highly nuanced social negotiation purely through localized sensor data and onboard computational processing. It must accurately interpret the hand gesture of a stranger through a muddy windshield under a heavy forest canopy. It must utilize its onboard physics engine to calculate the structural integrity and weight-bearing capacity of an unpaved dirt shoulder. It must inherently understand the abstract human concept of yielding on a single-lane mountain pass without relying on a pre-programmed digital map or a remote human overseer clicking a mouse. This specific type of chaotic, unpredictable scenario is known in the autonomous engineering field as the long tail of edge cases. The long tail represents the infinite, chaotic variables of the real physical world. Automakers can relatively easily program a neural network to handle 99% of standard driving scenarios on a sunny, perfectly paved interstate highway. But that final 1%, the long tail, contains millions of bizarre, one-in-a-million variables that require true human reasoning to solve safely. Solving that final 1% is exponentially more difficult, incredibly time-consuming, and vastly more computationally expensive than solving the first 99% combined. It involves programming a machine to understand context, human psychology, and the physics of completely unstructured environments. Beyond the monumental limitations of current artificial intelligence, there is a fundamental physical barrier preventing the realization of Level 5 autonomy. The incredibly sophisticated sensor fusion matrix required to perceive the world, including the spinning LiDAR modules, the long-range millimeter-wave radar, and the high-resolution optical cameras, are all strictly constrained by the unforgiving laws of physics and thermodynamics. Let us examine the historical trends of sensor performance in extreme weather conditions. Imagine an autonomous vehicle attempting to navigate a sudden severe whiteout blizzard in North Dakota. The ambient temperature drops to -20 degrees Fahrenheit. The optical cameras are instantly blinded by the swirling, opaque wall of white snow, rendering their visual data useless. The spinning LiDAR sensors, which rely on bouncing rapid pulses of laser light off physical objects to create a topographical map, become entirely paralyzed. The laser pulses reflect off the heavy, dense snowflakes in the air, creating a chaotic wall of false positive data points that completely overwhelm the vehicle's onboard processors. Furthermore, the vehicle's forward-facing radar might theoretically still penetrate the falling snow, but a thick, heavy layer of ice rapidly accumulates over the front bumper and grille, physically blocking the radio waves from transmitting. A human driver in this exact scenario can simply turn up the internal cabin heat, activate the mechanical windshield wipers, carefully scrape the ice off the glass, and rely on their spatial awareness and memory of the local road geometry to inch their way to a safe pullover location. A machine lacking physical, mechanical wipers for every single exterior sensor, and unable to extrapolate the road path without clear, uninterrupted data streams, will simply paralyze itself. It will execute a minimal risk condition, pull over to the side of the road, shut down its autonomous driving systems, and strand the occupants in highly dangerous, freezing temperatures until the weather clears. This brings us directly to the multi-trillion-dollar secret that the technology and automotive industries are quietly maneuvering around behind closed doors in corporate boardrooms. The absolute, uncompromising definition of Level 5 autonomy might be economically and practically impossible to achieve within our current lifetimes. The sheer amount of onboard computing power, the massive requirement for redundant sensor hardware, the intricate sensor cleaning mechanisms, and the massive electrical energy required to make a single vehicle infinitely intelligent in all weather conditions creates a consumer product that is vastly too expensive for the mass market. It requires putting a multi-million-dollar supercomputer into the chassis of a standard family sedan. Instead of relentlessly pursuing the mythical, flawless Level 5 vehicle, the global transportation industry is rapidly pivoting toward a completely different, far more economically viable engineering strategy. They are coming to the collective realization that instead of trying to make the individual car infinitely smart, they must make the physical infrastructure surrounding the car infinitely smart. This massive strategic pivot relies on a foundational technology known as vehicle-to-everything communication, commonly abbreviated as V2X. The true future of global autonomous driving does not rely on a lone, isolated robot car trying to blindly guess what the physical world is doing through degraded sensors. It relies on establishing a hyper-connected, deeply integrated hive mind. In this rapidly approaching infrastructure paradigm, the physical environment talks to the machine. The municipal traffic lights will broadcast their exact timing phases, red, yellow, and green durations, directly to the approaching vehicle's computer via high-speed cellular networks. The physical asphalt on the highway will contain embedded smart sensors transmitting real-time moisture levels and ice formation data directly to the vehicle's anti-lock braking system. Other autonomous and human-driven cars on the road will constantly broadcast their precise speed, steering angle, and tire traction status to every single vehicle within a 2-mile radius using dedicated short-range communications protocols. The car will not strictly need to physically see the pedestrian stepping off the curb with an optical camera, because the pedestrian's personal smartphone or smartwatch will continuously broadcast their precise GPS coordinates directly to the vehicle's collision avoidance neural network. We are actively transitioning from a world of isolated, independent autonomous vehicles to a massive, heavily interconnected autonomous ecosystem. This solves the processing deficit of the car by offloading the computational burden to the surrounding smart city grid. But this monumental, unstoppable shift towards a fully connected, universally broadcasting vehicle-to-everything infrastructure creates a terrifying new vulnerability that most everyday consumers and policymakers have never even considered. When every single car, traffic light, pedestrian device, and piece of civic infrastructure is constantly transmitting critical, life-or-death safety data over an invisible wireless network, who is actively protecting that network? What happens when a highly sophisticated, malicious entity or a hostile foreign intelligence service decides to target and infiltrate this interconnected digital highway? The potential outcomes of a compromised vehicle-to-everything network are catastrophic, leading to weaponized infrastructure and systemic gridlock. We need to tear open the dark, highly classified reality of automotive cybersecurity and the lethal threat of remote vehicle hijacking before you ever let a computer take the wheel of your family car. The shift toward total autonomy has introduced a terrifying new dimension to automotive safety that has nothing to do with brake pads or tire tread. We are moving into an era where a car is no longer a mechanical tool, but a high-performance mobile server rack that happens to weigh 4,000 pounds and travel at 80 miles per hour. In the year 2026, the cybersecurity of an autonomous vehicle is arguably more critical than its crash test rating. To understand why, we must look at the historical trends of vehicle hacking. Over a decade ago, cybersecurity researchers demonstrated that they could remotely infiltrate a standard SUV over a cellular connection, physically disabling the brakes and steering the vehicle into a ditch while the driver watched helplessly. Those early vulnerabilities were found in relatively simple infotainment systems. Today, the attack surface of a Level 4 or Level 5 autonomous vehicle is exponentially larger. Every single point of entry into the vehicle's ecosystem is a potential gateway for a malicious actor. This includes the over-the-air software updates the manufacturer sends to your garage, the high-speed 5G or 6G cellular data streams providing real-time navigation, and even the local short-range wireless sensors used for tire pressure monitoring or keyless entry. Imagine if a software engineer named Robert is commuting through downtown Seattle in his state-of-the-art autonomous commuter pod. While Robert is focused on a video call, a sophisticated attacker exploits a zero-day vulnerability in the vehicle's V2X communication module. This module is designed to receive safety data from the surrounding city infrastructure. By sending a series of spoofed, high-priority data packets, the attacker convinces the car's onboard computer that a massive multi-car pileup has occurred just inches in front of the bumper. The vehicle's autonomous system, programmed to prioritize safety above all else, executes an immediate, maximum pressure emergency braking maneuver. On a wet, high-speed bridge, this sudden deceleration triggers a real-world chain reaction of collisions behind Robert's car, effectively weaponizing the safety software itself. The potential outcomes of such a systemic breach go far beyond individual carjackings. In a fully connected autonomous grid, the risk is shifted from the individual to the collective. If a malicious entity gains access to the centralized cloud server that manages a fleet of 50,000 robot access in a city like New York or Miami, they could theoretically issue a simultaneous shutdown command to every single vehicle during the peak of rush hour. The result would be a total, impenetrable paralysis of the city's entire transportation network, preventing emergency services from reaching hospitals and causing billions of dollars in economic disruption. This is why the United States Department of Transportation and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration are aggressively developing new federal safety standards specifically for automotive firmware. Manufacturers are now required to implement hardware-based security modules, essentially a digital vault inside the car's computer that stores encryption keys and validates every single line of code before it is allowed to execute. However, the threat is not just limited to remote digital hacking. We also have to contend with physical adversarial attacks designed to confuse the vehicle's artificial intelligence. Imagine if a group of vandals applies a few pieces of strategically placed black electrical tape to a standard stop sign in a quiet suburban neighborhood. To a human driver, it is still obviously a stop sign. But for an optical camera system relying on a neural network trained on pixel-perfect geometry, that tape can fundamentally alter the machine's perception. A case study in adversarial machine learning showed that by slightly modifying the surface of a sign, researchers could trick a high-end autonomous system into misclassifying a stop sign as a 45-mile-per-hour speed limit sign. If a vehicle enters a busy intersection at nearly 50 miles per hour because its vision system was tricked by a few pieces of tape, the results are catastrophic. This leads us to a critical, often overlooked component of the autonomous masterclass: sensor integrity. For a vehicle to operate at level 4 or 5, it must have absolute confidence that the data it is receiving from the physical world is accurate. But sensors can be spoofed. Researchers have successfully demonstrated that they can use low-cost handheld lasers to overwhelm a vehicle's LiDAR sensors, creating ghost objects in the middle of the road that do not actually exist. By shining a laser at the spinning LiDAR unit, an attacker can create the illusion of a pedestrian standing in the lane, forcing the car to swerve or stop abruptly. Similarly, radar jamming technology can be used to hide real objects, making a stationary concrete barrier invisible to the car's digital eyes. To combat these threats, 2026-era autonomous vehicles utilize a process called cross-sensor verification. The car's brain acts as a digital detective, constantly comparing data between different types of hardware. If the LiDAR says there is a wall in front of the car, but the radar and the optical cameras see an empty road, the system identifies a data conflict. It must then decide which sensor to trust based on a complex hierarchy of confidence scores. If the conflict cannot be resolved within a few milliseconds, the vehicle defaults to its most conservative safety protocol, often slowing down and pulling to the shoulder. But even this safety default can be exploited. If an attacker can trigger frequent, false positive safety stops across a major highway, they can effectively shut down the flow of commerce without ever physically touching a vehicle. As we move toward a world where the human driver is no longer the final arbiter of safety, the burden of trust shifts to the manufacturers and the government regulators. We are entering a period of historical transition where the liability for a fatal accident might be determined by a forensic analysis of a car's firewall rather than a skid mark on the pavement. Insurance companies are already pivoting, hiring cybersecurity experts to assess the risk profiles of different autonomous software architectures. This brings us to the ultimate question of the autonomous age. Who is actually in charge? When you step into a vehicle that is talking to the city, receiving updates from the cloud, and being monitored by a fleet management center, you have surrendered more than just the steering wheel. You have surrendered your privacy, your movement data, and your physical safety to a vast, invisible digital architecture. But what if the greatest danger isn't a hacker or a malfunctioning sensor? What if the most significant hurdle to the 5 levels of autonomy isn't the technology at all, but the complex, messy world of American ethics and law? We need to talk about the trolley problem. When a computer is forced to choose between 2 unavoidable accidents, how does it decide who lives and who dies? This isn't just a philosophical debate for a college classroom. It is a line of code being written by a 20-something engineer in Silicon Valley right now. The way these machines are programmed to value human life will change the fabric of our society forever. And the legal battle over these ethical algorithms is just beginning to heat up. You will not believe the specific secret directives that some companies are using to determine how their cars should behave in a split-second life or death crisis, and how those decisions could impact you the next time you cross the street. The transition from human intuition to algorithmic decision-making brings us to the most uncomfortable reality of the autonomous age. We are moving beyond simple sensor physics and entering the realm of machine ethics. In the engineering world, this is often referred to as the optimization of unavoidable harm. For decades, philosophers have debated the trolley problem, a thought experiment where a person must choose between allowing a runaway trolley to kill 5 people or pulling a lever to divert it onto a track where it will kill only 1. In a classroom, this is an abstract exercise. In the year 2026, for the software engineers building Level 4 and Level 5 systems in the United States, this is a literal requirement for production-ready code. Imagine a commuter named Brandon traveling in a fully autonomous Level 4 shuttle through a densely populated neighborhood in Boston. The vehicle is moving at 35 miles per hour. Suddenly, a group of 3 children darts into the street from behind a parked delivery truck. Brandon's car has less than 10 feet to react. Its LiDAR has already mapped the environment, and its onboard computer has calculated that a collision is mathematically certain. The vehicle has 3 potential outcomes in its immediate trajectory. It can maintain its course and strike the children. It can swerve left into oncoming traffic, potentially causing a head-on collision with a heavy SUV. Or it can swerve right, crashing into a concrete bridge abutment, which would likely cause severe injury or death to Brandon, the passenger. This is where the secret directives of corporate ethics come into play. When you are a passenger in an autonomous vehicle, you are trusting an optimization function to value your life against the lives of others. Some manufacturers have historically leaned toward a passenger-first philosophy. Their argument is rooted in consumer trust. They believe that a person would never purchase or enter a vehicle that is programmed to sacrifice them in a crisis. Other companies, under increasing pressure from international safety advocates and moral philosophers, are exploring a utilitarian approach, where the algorithm is programmed to minimize the total number of lives lost, regardless of whether those lives are inside or outside the vehicle. The data behind these decisions is not just speculative. Historical trends in machine ethics research, such as the MIT Moral Machine Project, have gathered millions of data points from people across the United States and the world. This research shows a stark divide in how we want machines to behave. In the United States, there is a strong cultural preference for saving the greatest number of lives, but also a significant hesitation when that utilitarian logic applies to the person who actually paid for the vehicle. This creates a legal and marketing nightmare for automakers. If a car is programmed to save the many by sacrificing the one, is the manufacturer liable for the death of their own customer? In 2026, the legal framework in the United States is struggling to catch up with these algorithmic choices. We are seeing the emergence of what legal scholars call the black box liability problem. When a Level 4 vehicle makes a split-second decision to swerve into a wall to save a pedestrian, the forensic investigators must pull the code to understand why. Was it a calculated ethical choice? Or was it a sensor malfunction? In traditional law, a human driver's panicked reaction is often viewed through the lens of the sudden emergency doctrine, which acknowledges that humans cannot be expected to make perfect decisions in a split-second crisis. A computer, however, is designed to be perfect. It is designed to calculate every variable. This removes the excuse of panic and replaces it with the burden of intent. To understand the step-by-step mechanics of how a car makes these choices, we have to look at the risk mapping software. The car's brain doesn't see a child or a wall in the way a human does. It sees a dynamic occupancy grid. Every object in the grid is assigned a cost value. A clear road has a cost of 0. A soft bush might have a cost of 10. A concrete barrier has a cost of 500. A human being has a cost that is significantly higher, often approaching infinity in the software's logic. When an accident becomes unavoidable, the pathfinding algorithm looks for the trajectory with the lowest cumulative cost. The controversy arises when we look at how different companies assign those costs. Imagine if a manufacturer quietly assigns a lower cost value to an elderly pedestrian compared to a young child. Or imagine if the algorithm factors in the safety rating of the other vehicles involved in a potential crash. If Brandon's car knows that the oncoming SUV has a 5-star safety rating and his own car has a lower rating, should it prioritize hitting the SUV because the passengers are more likely to survive? These are not just lines of code. They are profound social and ethical judgments being made by private corporations without a public vote. Case studies from early autonomous testing have shown that these edge cases are more common than the public realizes. We have seen instances where autonomous systems struggled to identify cyclists because their physical profile didn't fit the standard categories of pedestrian or vehicle. In those moments of uncertainty, the machine's behavior can become unpredictable. This has led to a push in 2026 for a standardized federal ethics set, a mandatory baseline for how all autonomous vehicles sold in the United States must value human life in a crisis. Without this, we risk a future where the level of safety you experience on the sidewalk depends on which brand of car is driving toward you. Furthermore, we must consider the insurance implications of these ethical algorithms. If a car is programmed to prioritize property damage over human injury, how does that affect your premiums? Insurance companies are now demanding access to the underlying decision-making logic of autonomous fleets. They want to know exactly how a car is programmed to behave in a high-stakes scenario before they agree to underwrite the risk. This is leading to a massive shift in the industry, where your insurance rate might be determined by the software version your car is running. This ethical minefield is the primary reason why Level 5 autonomy remains a distant goal for many. The technical hurdles of driving in a blizzard are difficult, but the ethical hurdles of programmed sacrifice are arguably much higher. We are asking machines to do something that we as humans have never fully agreed upon, to define the value of a life in a mathematical equation. But as we grapple with who lives and who dies in a crash, we are overlooking a much larger, more immediate shift in the American way of life. If these machines eventually become safer than humans, and if the ethical and legal questions are finally settled, the very concept of car ownership is going to evaporate. We are standing on the edge of a total economic collapse for the traditional automotive industry. The 5 levels of autonomy are not just changing how we drive, they are changing how we work, where we live, and how the entire United States economy functions. We are about to enter a world where the steering wheel becomes a relic of the past, and with it, the multi-trillion-dollar industries that rely on human error. You need to see how the death of the driver is going to rewrite the American dream, and why your next car might not actually be yours at all. The shift toward the 5 levels of autonomous driving is not merely a technological evolution of the engine or the sensor. It is a fundamental demolition and reconstruction of the American economy. To understand the magnitude of this change in the year 2026, we have to look at the primary financial asset of the average United States household: the automobile. Historically, the car has been the second most expensive purchase a person ever makes, yet it is arguably the most inefficient investment in human history. Data from the United States Department of Transportation reveals that the average privately owned vehicle sits idle for approximately 95% of its lifespan. It spends its existence occupying valuable real estate in suburban driveways or concrete parking structures, depreciating in value every single second it remains stationary. Level 4 and Level 5 autonomy represent the end of this dead capital era. We are entering the age of transportation as a service. Imagine if a resident named Alex living in suburban Charlotte, North Carolina, decides to opt out of traditional car ownership in 2026. Historically, Alex would have spent months researching a vehicle, negotiating with the dealership, and committing to a 60-month financing plan with a high interest rate, plus the recurring costs of comprehensive insurance, registration, and preventative maintenance. Instead, Alex now pays a monthly subscription fee to a localized autonomous fleet provider. When Alex needs to commute to the office, he opens an application. Within 3 minutes, a Level 4 autonomous pod, which has been circulating the neighborhood or waiting in a strategic staging area, glides to his curb. Alex does not own this machine. He does not care about its resale value or its oil change interval. He is paying for the utility of the movement, not the possession of the hardware. When the pod drops Alex at his destination, it does not go to a parking lot to sit idle for 8 hours. It immediately recalculates his trajectory based on real-time demand data and moves to pick up a college student 3 blocks away. This is the potential outcome of high-level autonomy, a massive increase in asset utilization. One autonomous vehicle in a shared fleet can potentially replace 8 to 12 privately owned cars on United States roads. The ripple effects of this shift are devastating to the traditional automotive industrial complex. Consider the historical trends of the American dealership model. For over a century, dealerships have functioned as the primary gatekeepers of mobility, protected by complex state franchise laws. But in a world where the majority of miles are traveled in corporate-owned autonomous fleets, the individual consumer is no longer the buyer. The buyer is a massive multinational conglomerate, or a municipal transit authority purchasing 50,000 units at a time directly from the manufacturer. The local dealership, with its sprawling asphalt lots and neon signs, becomes an architectural relic. Furthermore, we must look at the historical trends of the secondary automotive economy. In the United States, billions of dollars are generated annually by the human error industry. This includes collision repair shops, personal injury law firms, and emergency room departments that specialize in traffic trauma. If Level 4 and Level 5 systems successfully reduce the frequency of accidents by even 70%, which is a conservative potential outcome based on early pilot programs in cities like Phoenix, the economic vacuum left behind will be staggering. Body shops that have relied on bent fenders and shattered headlights for decades will see their customer base evaporate. This is not just a change in technology, it is a total relocation of capital. This economic restructuring extends deep into our urban and suburban geography. Take a moment to look at any major American city from an aerial view. You will see that a massive percentage of our most valuable land is dedicated to the storage of stationary vehicles. In cities like Los Angeles or Houston, parking lots can account for up to 40% of the land use in the central business district. As the need for private parking vanishes due to the continuous circulation of Level 4 fleets, we are witnessing a potential outcome where hundreds of square miles of urban concrete are reclaimed. In 2026, we are seeing the first historical cases of developers in Denver and Atlanta converting former multi-story parking garages into affordable housing units and green spaces. The 5 levels of autonomy are literally reshaping the physical footprint of the American dream. However, this transition also presents a significant challenge to the United States labor market. We must examine the case study of the professional driving sector. Trucking is currently one of the largest employers of men without a college degree in the United States. As Level 4 autonomous trucking begins to dominate the long-haul interstate corridors, the demand for human long-haul operators is shifting. The potential outcome is not necessarily the total elimination of jobs, but a radical transformation of the role. In 2026, we see the rise of the autonomous fleet technician and the remote freight monitor. The job moves from the cab of a vibrating semi-truck to a climate-controlled operations center, where one person supervises a platoon of 6 autonomous trucks as they traverse the plains of Nebraska. Even the concept of the American suburbs is being rewritten. Historically, the distance a person could live from their place of employment was strictly limited by the psychological and physical toll of the commute. Driving for 90 minutes in stop-and-go traffic is an exhausting, unproductive task. But if your vehicle is a Level 4 mobile office, that 90 minutes is no longer lost time. You can sleep, conduct meetings, or engage in recreation. This shift allows for a further decentralization of the American population. If the commute is automated, the geographical boundaries of the labor market expand, potentially driving up property values in rural areas that were previously considered too remote for daily travel. But there is a darker, more complex side to this economic utopia. As we move away from ownership, we are moving toward a world of total surveillance and gate-kept access. When you own your car, you have the freedom to travel whenever and wherever you want without asking for permission from a server. In a world of autonomous subscriptions, your mobility is subject to the terms of service of a private corporation. If your subscription lapses, or if a corporate algorithm decides your destination is outside its operational design domain, your freedom of movement is instantly curtailed. We are trading the messy, expensive freedom of the steering wheel for the polished, efficient convenience of a digital platform. The multi-trillion-dollar question for the United States in 2026 is how we will manage the transition period. We are currently in the messy middle, where Level 2 and Level 3 vehicles are sharing the road with Level 4 test fleets and millions of human-driven Level 0 cars. This hybrid era is the most dangerous and economically volatile period in the history of transportation. As the cost of human-driven insurance begins to skyrocket to account for the relative safety of autonomous systems, the average American may find themselves priced out of the driver's seat long before the technology is fully ready to take over. We are about to witness the greatest legal and financial battle of our generation, as the old world of the open road fights for survival against the new world of the automated grid. You need to understand the hidden costs of this transition that no one is talking about, specifically how your personal data has become the new fuel for the autonomous age and how your every movement is being harvested for profit. What happens when your car knows more about your daily routine than your own family does? And who is buying that information in the shadows of the digital highway? The data economy of the year 2026 has transformed your vehicle from a simple mode of transportation into a sophisticated surveillance hub that generates more profit through information than it does through horsepower. To truly understand the depths of the 5 levels of autonomous driving, we must look past the LiDAR sensors and the neural networks and examine the massive silent harvest of personal data that fuels this entire industry. When you sit in a modern autonomous vehicle, you are not just a passenger. You are a high-value data point in a multi-billion-dollar information brokerage. Historical trends in the technology sector have shown that whenever a service becomes exceptionally convenient or seemingly free, the user is the actual product being sold. Autonomous driving is the ultimate realization of this trend. Imagine if a freelance architect named Elena is beginning her morning commute in a Level 4 autonomous shuttle in the city of Phoenix, Arizona. As Elena enters the vehicle, the interior sensors immediately begin their work. High-resolution infrared cameras, designed primarily to monitor for driver distraction in Level 3 systems or medical emergencies in Level 4 pods, perform a biometric scan of Elena's face. This system identifies her, logs her heart rate through subtle skin tone fluctuations, and uses sentiment analysis software to determine her current mood. If the cameras detect that Elena looks tired or stressed, the vehicle's interior lighting subtly shifts to a calming blue hue, and the climate control adjusts to her recorded preference of 72 degrees. On the surface, this is an incredible luxury. In the background, this biometric data is being encrypted and transmitted to a centralized cloud server. The volume of data generated by a single Level 4 autonomous vehicle is staggering. Engineering data suggests that these machines can produce upwards of 4 terabytes of data for every 8 hours of operation. While a significant portion of this is discarded or compressed for navigation purposes, a massive amount of metadata is preserved. This includes every GPS coordinate Elena visits, the duration of her stays, the specific stores she glances at through the window, and even the audio environment within the cabin. In 2026, the historical trends of advertising have shifted from the smartphone screen to the physical environment. As Elena's shuttle passes a specific coffee franchise, a high-definition screen in the headrest displays a personalized offer for her favorite latte, timed perfectly with the biometric data indicating her low energy levels. This is the potential outcome of the integrated autonomous economy. Your commute is no longer private time. It is a curated, monetized experience. We must also consider the exterior data harvesting. An autonomous vehicle is a rolling 3,600-degree camera system that never stops recording. As Elena's shuttle moves through the streets, its LiDAR and optical cameras are mapping the environment with millimeter precision. This means the vehicle is capturing the license plates of every car it passes, the faces of every pedestrian on the sidewalk, and the current condition of every piece of private property along its route. Historically, this data was used strictly for navigation and safety. However, in the year 2026, third-party data brokers are purchasing this environmental data to feed various industries. Insurance companies use these rolling camera feeds to verify property damage claims or to adjust the risk profiles of specific neighborhoods. Real estate investment firms analyze the footage to track the foot traffic at competing retail locations. Even local governments are beginning to tap into autonomous fleets to monitor for code violations or infrastructure decay, effectively turning every autonomous car into a mobile municipal inspector. The legal landscape regarding this data in the United States remains a complex, high-stakes battleground. While some states have passed consumer privacy acts, the federal government is still struggling to define who actually owns the data generated by an autonomous vehicle. Is it the passenger? Is it the fleet operator? Or is it the manufacturer that designed the software? Case studies from early 2025 indicated that many consumers were unknowingly signing away their data rights in the lengthy terms of service agreements required to activate their vehicle's autonomous features. These agreements often grant the manufacturer the right to share anonymized data with partners, but as data scientists have proven, it is remarkably easy to de-anonymize a person's movement patterns. If a computer knows where you sleep, where you work, and where you go for lunch every Tuesday, it doesn't need your name to know exactly who you are. Furthermore, we have to address the security of this data. If a centralized server containing the movement history of millions of American citizens is compromised, the potential outcomes are a nightmare for national security and personal safety. In 2026, we are seeing the emergence of data kidnapping, where hackers threaten to release a person's private in-car audio recordings or biometric history unless a ransom is paid. We are standing at the absolute precipice of a historical inversion. For over a century, the American identity has been inextricably linked to the mechanical agency of the driver. To own a car was to own freedom. To turn a key was to command a 2-ton explosion of kinetic potential. But in the year 2026, that fundamental pillar of the American dream is being dismantled and replaced by a digital architecture that prioritizes efficiency over ego. This final part of our masterclass is not just a summary. It is an autopsy of the era of the human driver and a roadmap for what comes next as we navigate the friction between human intuition and algorithmic precision. To understand the weight of this shift, imagine a 16-year-old named Chloe living in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio, in the summer of 2026. Historically, this birthday would represent the ultimate rite of passage, the acquisition of a driver's license. For generations, this plastic card was the keys to the kingdom, the physical manifestation of adulthood and independence. But for Chloe, the historical trends have shifted. She lives in a municipal zone that has been heavily optimized for Level 4 autonomous shuttle networks. Her parents no longer see the high cost of insurance, the mechanical liability of a teenage driver, and the exorbitant price of a private vehicle as a necessary investment. Chloe represents the first generation in American history that may never truly learn the tactile art of the counter-steer or the delicate pressure of a manual brake pedal. The potential outcomes of this generational shift are profound. We are witnessing the slow death of the driver's license as a cultural milestone, replaced by the seamless, invisible utility of a transportation subscription. As we look at the 5 levels of autonomous driving one final time, we must recognize that the transition from Level 0 to Level 5 is not a straight line. It is a battle for control. Level 0 was the era of pure human agency. Level 1 and 2 were the era of the high-tech safety net, where the machine began to whisper suggestions to the driver. Level 3 was the dangerous, messy compromise where the machine asked for permission to take over. And now, in 2026, Level 4 is the established reality in our major urban centers like San Francisco, Phoenix, and Austin. However, the final threshold, Level 5, remains the ultimate technical and philosophical horizon. The step-by-step reality of why Level 5 remains elusive in 2026 comes down to the sheer, chaotic complexity of the United States infrastructure. While a Level 4 robotaxi can navigate the grid-like streets of Phoenix with 99% reliability, it still fails when faced with the unstructured reality of a rural logging road in Oregon or a flooded residential street in the Louisiana bayou after a hurricane. A human driver uses millions of years of evolutionary pattern recognition to understand that a deep puddle might hide a catastrophic pothole, or that a swaying tree branch indicates an imminent power line failure. The machine, despite its trillions of calculations, still struggles with this level of contextual inference. The potential outcomes of pushing Level 5 into these unstructured environments too early are documented in numerous case studies where autonomous systems have become paralyzed by simple environmental debris that a human would simply drive around. This brings us to the architectural transformation of the American landscape. As autonomy becomes the dominant mode of transport for the masses, the physical structure of our homes and cities is changing. In 2026, we are seeing the first wave of new residential developments in North Carolina and Texas designed without traditional 2-car garages. Why dedicate 400 square feet of climate-controlled space to a depreciating asset that you no longer own? Instead, these homes feature simplified drop-off portals. The garage is being reclaimed as a home office, a gym, or an additional living unit, fundamentally increasing the density and value of suburban real estate. This is a historical trend we haven't seen since the transition from the horse and carriage to the internal combustion engine. But there is a darker, more complex psychological cost to this efficiency. We must analyze the phenomenon of the loss of human agency. When you are the operator of a Level 0 or Level 2 vehicle, you are an active participant in the world. You are making choices, reacting to hazards, and exercising a specific type of cognitive spatial awareness. In a Level 4 world, you are a passenger in your own life. You are being moved from point A to point B by an algorithm that has been optimized by a corporation to prioritize its own liability and energy efficiency. The potential outcomes for our collective cognitive health are still being debated by sociologists. If we no longer have to navigate, if we no longer have to be hyper-aware of our surroundings, what happens to the human capacity for spatial reasoning? Furthermore, we must address the grim reality of the safety-utility trade-off. Historical data from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has long pointed to the fact that over 94% of serious crashes are caused by human error, distraction, intoxication, or fatigue. Mathematically, the widespread adoption of Level 4 and Level 5 autonomy could save tens of thousands of lives in the United States every single year. This is a case study in collective benefit versus individual freedom. To achieve this level of safety, the autonomous grid must be predictable. Predictability requires the elimination of the most unpredictable variable on the road, the human driver. In 2026, we are seeing the early stages of legislative movements in several states to create autonomous-only lanes on major interstates like I-95 and I-10. These are dedicated corridors where human-driven vehicles are strictly prohibited, allowing autonomous truck platoons and high-speed passenger pods to communicate with each other and travel at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour with inches of separation. If you want to drive yourself, you are relegated to the slower, more congested secondary roads. The historical trend is clear. The right to drive is slowly being transitioned into a high-priced luxury or a niche hobby, much like horse riding became after the invention of the car. As we conclude this masterclass on the 5 levels of autonomous driving, we have to look at the ultimate verdict. The technology is no longer the primary hurdle. We have the sensors, we have the LiDAR, we have the redundant processing power, and we have the 5G and 6G networks required for V2X communication. The final transformation of the United States highway system is now a matter of social and legal will. We are deciding as a society that the statistical safety of the machine is worth the surrender of our individual control. We are choosing a world where a car crash is a rare software anomaly rather than a daily human tragedy. But as the steering wheel disappears and the dashboard transforms into a cinema screen, we have to ask ourselves one final, haunting question. In a world where the machine knows where you are going before you do, where every turn is pre-calculated for maximum corporate efficiency, and where the thrill of the open road has been sterilized into a buffered, data-mined experience, what have we actually gained, and what have we irrevocably lost? We have solved the problem of the commute, but we may have accidentally deleted the joy of the journey. The 5 levels of autonomy are now fully explained. You understand the sensors, the levels, the liability, and the ethics. But there is a silent war brewing that is even more significant than the shift to autonomy. It is the war over the energy that will power this massive, hungry digital grid. As we move to millions of autonomous electric vehicles, our national power grid is facing a breaking point that could leave entire cities in the dark. In our next deep dive, we are going to expose the hidden energy crisis of the autonomous age and the radical, controversial solutions that are being whispered about in the halls of the Department of Energy. You thought the car was the story, but the electricity required to run its brain is about to change everything you know about the cost of living in America.